Hi, you're listening to Baachu Talk, a podcast for government and professional services professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundram, and I will be sitting down with our government leaders, outsourced business service leaders, GovTech entrepreneurs, voluntary community social enterprise leaders, independent policy think tank leaders to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn all about their values and collective impact in our society. Today's guest is Reshma Ramachandran. Reshma is currently Senior Vice President and Group Head of Transformation for the Adecco Group and is based on their headquarters at Zurich, Switzerland. She is an innovative leader with 20 plus years of experience working in multicultural teams and geographies, including the United States, Europe, the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia. She brings a wealth of experience in digital and business transformation and is currently working at the intersections of humans and technology that helps make the future work for everyone. Wow. Reshma coaches and mentors several young women in universities and encourages them to opt for STEM careers and minority ethnic groups to help them advance in their careers. As an advocate for women in STEM, Reshma actively champions the business benefits of employing an effective inclusion strategy that has been a voice of change both inside and outside of the organization. Reshma has been recognized with many awards. To name few, she was part of top 100 thought leaders and influencers in digital transformation, featured by Awards Magazine, Real People Engagement Award winner 2020 Switzerland, featured in Forbes Dark for Leadership and Innovation, July 2020, contributing writer Forbes Dark, finalist Agent of Change, Global Women in Telco and Tech, finalist Trailblazer Award by Microsoft, featured in 100 Female Executives 2020 for Leading by Example by Involved Organizations, supported by Yahoo Finance. Finally, featured in 100 Ethnic Minority Executives 2021 by Involved Organization, again supported by Yahoo Finance. That's a lot of awards, especially last year when we all are in lockdown. Reshma, amazing. Welcome to Baachu Talk. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you for this amazing opportunity to be on this podcast.
It's a pleasure, Reshma. It's a pleasure. Reshma, let's go back to the very beginning. Where were you born? And let's talk about your high school and education.
I was born in India, in a very, very rural part of India. So it's really the southernmost tip. So, I used to live by the sea, coastal part. And that's where I grew up. I was born there. I grew up. I spent my high school years in that. I can't say a city or a town because it's really, really rural part of India. And my first, I would say, the 16 years I spent there.
Wow, for 16 years. Which part of India is southern part? This side, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, which side?
So I come from Kerala. Nice. And really on the west coast of Kerala and, by the Arabian Sea.
Wow, God's own country.
That's right. I have to say it was really, really amazing growing up in that part of the world.
Wow, beautiful. Definitely, Reshma. I'm on the other side, but I visited Kerala because Coimbatore, where I was born, is at the borders of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, right? So we have the mix of both. So that's beautiful. So any childhood memories of studying and living for the first 16 years in Kerala?
So I would say a lot of memories. In fact, I think I am who I am today simply because of my roots and simply because of my first 16 years of growing up in that part of the world, which was basically like, very less, and living in the Western world. And you look back, you actually cannot believe that you could live with so much less, right? So I would say one of the strongest memories I have of my childhood is actually growing up without power. We didn't have a reliable electricity. So, and as you can imagine, India is very competitive. So, and if you need to have a good future, you needed to have good job, which means you needed to have good education. And studying without electricity is something that is still etched in my memory. So we used to have these evenings with, tons of homework, exams, competitive exams, and then you would have no power. So which meant that you needed to study either under the candlelight or under a petroleum lamp. And I think one of the things that happened for me was also growing up, to overcome challenges like that, which is totally external, and to see, okay, what is the best means to study. And I'm an early riser, and that comes again from growing up in that part of the world where, in the mornings, because the load on the electric power lines is lower, there was a higher possibility of having electricity at home. So I used to get up at 3 a.m. Just so that you could study and finish your homework. So this is something I've carried forward. So I'm still an early riser. I get up anywhere between 4 and 5. So 5 is like really the latest time that I get out of bed.
My God, most of the listeners might be freaked out just by now by waking up 3 o'clock, Reshma. I think that's you just reminded me of my father there. I think that generation. I mean, like we lived with what we've got, and education was the ultimate exit for us to go and do what we need to do. You nailed it brilliantly there, Reshma. So 16 years, setting your own standards at a very young age, working around your limited environment. What happened after 16?
Yeah, so I think, and probably you can relate to it better. Education was the key, right? So parents invested a lot, especially in the southern part of India. Parents invested a lot in children's education, and I'm very, very happy that my parents kept the focus of education. So after that, so it was a natural choice. I was good in maths and science. I've always scored centum, so I've always had 100% marks in mathematics and science. So it was a natural choice to go into engineering. Again, looking back, I would say it was I was very ignorant simply because there was no exposure to what are the fields in engineering. So I had a maternal uncle of mine who was into engineering, so who had studied engineering, and he had taken civil engineering. So this was like by default, I would say, my choice, simply because I didn't know that there were other possibilities. And that was also the time that I actually moved out of the little village that I grew up and moved to a city. So city was, I would say, another experience. So one of the things that also struck me was city had power. Second, also I wouldn't necessarily call it opportunity, so to say, but it was more the exposure. So in where at least I did my engineering, there was a lot of possibilities. So this is something that I would say changed my thinking in the sense of it's not so much only about opportunities, but also about knowing those opportunities. So I'm a big, big promoter of giving exposure to others. Finally, when you have the exposure and know what the world holds, what are the possibilities, you have the power to choose. Something which I did not have the first 16 years of my life. I didn't have the exposure. My parents, although they were very focused on education, simply they didn't have the exposure. So it was, I just didn't know the possibilities. But I would say my engineering changed my perspective in terms of looking for possibilities. And this is also something what I call as a growth mindset. So it's all about learning. So just be curious and see what possibilities are there. And something that I would say has stuck with me. I can articulate it better today, 20 years after. But, if you had asked me back then, I wouldn't have been able to articulate it this way. I still look for opportunities. And I still look for possibilities and ask myself, is there something I can do more? And is there something I can do more because I now know that it exists? You never know what you can do until you know it exists. Totally. Right? So it's more about looking for those aspects, not only of yourself, but also what exists, and ask yourself, are there things that I can do more? So if you look at my 20 years of career, it has been a classic example of that. I have lived in 13 countries simply because I have asked myself, is there something I'm not doing because I don't know, or is it something because I don't want to do it? And you never know until you know what exists.
Wow. Very powerful there, Reshma. So that 16-year-old girl who's leaving the village, coming to the town, doing civil engineering. Civil engineering at that point would be more or less male dominated, right? Even today, you find like 5 women taking it, and there are 25 people On the other side, you might have got a glimpse of diversity straight away in the university. So how was the experience coming from a village to studying university, that to civil engineering at that point?
So engineering by itself, I would say, was very male dominated. So I would say, I don't remember the statistics, but I can be 100% sure when I say this, we were 10% less or even lesser, like, single digit in terms of female representation. It was intimidating, but I also think, one of the things, what the old adage that says ignorance is bliss, I think there was a lot of ignorance in me to expect that, nothing can stop you, right? Like just being a girl and, someone with very less exposure. I just didn't know a lot of things, so I could try a lot of things. And that didn't intimidate me in the sense of stopping me from going after what I wanted. But now looking back, I think one of the and again, growing up in India, this is that you have a lot of social conditioning. So I would say the biggest subconscious challenge I had was not necessarily in the university being in the underrepresented minority group, but it was more a question of what holds after. So a lot of the social conditioning is that, being a woman and young woman, you finish your graduation and you get married, and then you figure out what you want to do, right? So this was, I would say, one of the subconsciously challenging factors I had, that, what if I'm not able to pursue what I wanted to pursue because all of the social expectations come onto you. And then what happens after marriage? You have childbirth, somewhere your dreams take a backseat, and probably like later it might come back, but you just can't pursue it the same way as your male friends would be able to do. So not so much, I would say, about the university or the education itself or being in a completely male dominated environment, but what do you do after was something that was extremely daunting back then.
Wow, totally. It's amazing, what we in the Western world today take it for granted. There, when we grow up, we just need to fight for every small thing.
I agree. Some things that are just taken for granted here. You're absolutely right.
Exactly. So successfully completing your civil engineering, what was your very first job, and how hard was it for you to get a job? Any interesting memories around it?
I would say pleasant memories. So I don't know, again, looking back, I don't know if my parents could have afforded my education on their own. I studied under scholarship, and the scholarship was from one of the most successful organizations in India, Larsen & Toubro, which was very much into civil engineering at that point in time, or engineering, heavy engineering, I would put it that way. So I had a contract with them, since they had sponsored my education, that I would join them after I finished. And, it still is one of the best employees in India. So absolutely no second thoughts. I joined them. And this is also where I would say another example of possibilities. So joining L&T back then just gave a huge, and I would say a humongous platform of opportunity. There was nothing, and again, it was very male dominated. But I would say I had a lot of good mentors who did not believe that being a woman should limit you. So I was one of the first women in the 60-year history back then, his 60-year history of L&T to actually having spent some time in construction site. So my first 6 months, I was in the office, and then, I really wanted to go and learn things. And that's also the point in time when I was able to move to the Middle East. So I moved to the Middle East onto a construction site, completely like throwing me out of my comfort zone. But nonetheless, giving me a great opportunity to learn and see what's out there in the world. And this is why, again, I might sound like a broken record when I say this, I truly believe in the power of seeing those possibilities. Because most of us, we just don't see those possibilities. We are like cocooned in our own world and say, this is what we know, what I call as a linear thinking. This is what we know. So we build everything based on our linear thinking of, okay, we know this and this is the next step and next step and next step. We just don't have the possibility, simply because we are cocooned in our world, to think laterally and see what are the possibilities. So L&D gave me a lot of opportunities in that sense to see what possibilities existed. So I was able to change in my 7-year stint with L&D. I was able to not only able to spend time in different countries, but also in different roles.
Amazing. And any memorable projects comes to your mind for the very first 7 years of your career?
Several, I would say several. So as I said, I was the first woman. I don't want to say I was the first woman to land in a construction site. And this was in the Middle East. So from both an industry point of view and a culture, country point of view, not very women friendly. So when I landed this, and I was in Qatar, Ras Laffan, literally a desert. So it's 90 kilometers from Doha. Which would be the nearest city. When I landed at the construction site, there were no ladies' toilets.
Oh.
So this was like, you would never expect to work in a place where there are literally no ladies' toilets. And I had to travel 9 kilometers to a gas station just to go to the ladies' toilet. But what it changed was also the thought process. And this was very interesting to see the thought process of the people who were there at that point in time, all men, and said, oh, why didn't we think about this? And we didn't think about this because we never expected a woman to land at a construction site. So 3 months later, we had a ladies' toilet. And I would say one of the things that, when I look back and when I'm still in touch with L&T, for my employer, and when I look at L&T now, I would say 20 years later, there are a lot more young women at site, a lot more women at construction sites, which means that, it's thought of at the moment, basic things like a toilet, a ladies' toilet. This was not back then thought of, simply because it's a stereotype, right? You don't expect a woman to land.
Wow, very powerful. I mean, like totally true there, Reshma. So my God. So and Middle East, and it's you made it sound simple. Middle East, working in Middle East as a woman, that too on construction sites is a game altogether. As you rightly said, you are a person who explore possibilities and were willing to go through the journey to see what it takes, what's going to happen. Let's face it, right? And that's amazing. So 7 years with L&T. Then what's next?
So what's next is, social expectations of marriage kicks in when you're 22, 23. So my parents were really, and my parents still live in the rural part. And again, probably you can relate to it better. There are neighbors, there are extended family who actually say, she's a girl, you need to marry her off. And I'm also very grateful to my parents for not having pushed that pressure onto me. But then nonetheless, marriage was inevitable in that sense. And I'm only happy that I got married to the right guy. We went in the university, so he was a classmate of mine, completely outside of the comfort zone of my parents. So we don't belong to the same community. So in an Indian terminology, if I put it that way, it's not an arranged marriage. But nonetheless, we, everything thankfully went well. We got married. And I left L&T for 2 reasons. One, my husband was working in the US at that time, and I was working in Dubai. I didn't want to stay separate. And second, this was also the time we were, welcoming a child into the family. So it gave kind of a good opportunity to have the choice to say that, I could leave the workforce without compromising on a career. So I took a break. I decided to take a break. And I left L&T, but nonetheless started a small consulting firm of my own, simply because, it's childcare is, yes, it's a full-time job, but it's also somebody who's interested in career. And a lot of women leave, and unfortunately leave. Back then, I didn't know the statistics, but unfortunately leave the workforce because of childcare. And you don't think about it actively, that you have left and, the time flies so quickly. And I didn't want to fall into that trap. Again, to be honest with you, not knowing the statistics, I wanted to do something that kept my intellectual side alive. And back in the US, it was easy to start something of your own. So I started a small consulting firm just to keep my intellectual side alive. But I also realized that there were a lot of women like me who had the intellectual capability to do what they wanted to do, but nonetheless wanted the flexi timing. So we were, by the time I left the so-called consulting practice, we were 9 of us, all moms who had left their careers for childcare. And I have to also say this is probably the first glimpse I had personally of what purpose can do, what your strong why can do. So a lot of clients used to actually come to us for consulting services simply because they liked the idea. It was a completely woman-run practice, and women who had actually given up their careers for childcare. So all SMEs, I would say, all completely, we were consulting for really small and medium enterprises. But the 3 years that I spent as an entrepreneur, not only that I could bring a lot of women back into the intellectual side, but also it gave me a lot of insights into, cash flow, for example. What does it mean by having people on your rolls, and how do you manage cash flow, and what does outstanding mean? So there was a lot of learning, which helped me go back to the workforce 3 years after. So my son was 3 years, and I said, being an entrepreneur, running something of your own does not necessarily give you flexibility, because you want to give all in, and it was not a good balance for the family. So I said, the best thing to do is, since I didn't want to give up a career, is to go back to a corporate world where you could find a better balance. And that's how I joined Accenture. I joined Accenture's management consulting practice. And I enjoyed consulting simply because it gives you a huge learning curve. It's really a steep learning curve.
Wow. Having known you, a person who you are, you just went there, you just worked around your conditions, limited conditions, which could be, a new mom in a new country, but still went on to create a community around you and then help the colleagues as well. So that's brilliant, Reshma. So essential construction to entrepreneur to a larger corporate world. So how long were you there, and was there any interesting memories or any projects?
Accenture, I spent 2 years' time, and it was mostly spent in Southeast Asia. And I would say memories in the sense of, these are times when you read, or there are times when you actually read of a lot of Harvard Business Review articles, a lot of research, and you read it and it doesn't just sink in terms of what does it mean by gender bias or stereotypical biases, or what does it mean by discrimination, until you actually personally experience it. So in Accenture, I was working for one of the largest oil corporations, and in Indonesia, another of those countries where I would say the stereotypical gender bias is very high. And this was another of those interesting projects I had, where it's simply that you land up there, you reach there, and people have already formed an opinion of you just by nothing. I've not even started, but then you are literally put at a sub-zero base. So you are an ethnic minority. People see you as, I'm not a white woman. I'm very much Asian, and you are a woman, and you land there, and they're like, can she do it? And this is where you're pushed to a sub-zero level. So I always say this, if women, and especially ethnic minority women, if we had a zero base, just a zero base, it would have been so much easier for us. But typically, and I say it from my own experience, almost always I have to say, you're put at a sub-zero level. So to come to that zero base and then working your way up, and this is why, research proves that especially women of color need to work at least 3 to 4 times more than the male counterparts to actually reach where they want to reach. And it's very unfortunate. So I would say my experience with 2 years of experience around consulting, the experience was great. I learned a lot. I worked for major corporations as a strategic consulting partner. However, the bias exists. And I left the job. I left Accenture, not because of biases, because I would have been too naive to say that biases don't exist anywhere else. I left it because my family had taken a hit. Family life had taken a hit, so to say. My husband was still based in the US. I was in Southeast Asia. It was not necessarily a great setup for the family. And we said, we could meet somewhere in between. And in between happened to be Zurich, Switzerland. So that's how we moved here. And both of us started with the same corporation, actually, which was Alstom Power. And I joined back, let's say, I left consulting and joined back into the industry. And that's also where I would say my love for transformation, business transformation, finally took shape and form. So Alstom was undergoing a major transformation at that point in time. And I joined them to transform the organization. And it was really a big and successful transformation in about 2 years' time. And we were able to position Alstom Power for sale. And as you probably know, it was bought by GE back then in 2015. And that's also when I said, okay, I need a new challenge. And I moved over to ABB. And also Sweden. So Sweden was that I spent a year in Sweden with ABB, again, part of a large transformation. But then ABB is a fantastic employer in that sense. So same as with L&T, I would say I had several opportunities, possibilities. I don't want to necessarily call it opportunities, several possibilities. So I moved into engineering, so product development. And after the products, let's say, were launched successfully, I moved as a head of engineering. And at the same time, I also got the role as a head of transformation, which was a lot around digital. So ABB was trying to, at that time, although we didn't have its strong strategy around that, we were actually trying to position ourselves in the digital arena. And there was a huge shift that we had to do from hardcore engineering, great engineering products to digitalization and positioning our services so that customers were not just buying our products, but also the services that came with it. So 5 years with ABB, I would say, opened a plethora of not only possibilities, but also opened up my mind. And this was also the time, so as a head of engineering, I had about 2,000 people in my function where, I have been a team leader, people manager, so to say, up until then. But this was the first time I was becoming a functional leader responsible for 2,000 people. And this was a time it kind of, piqued my interest in the intersection of humans and technology. Because as you know, ABB is a lot into robotics. So we actually what we call as a cobos. So robots are going to coexist with humans. And a lot of industries, you can see this is really disrupting the way you look at that industry itself. And I saw the possibility of this beautiful intersection of humans and technology. So Cobos would be one, but also there is a larger space, right? Larger space of human psychology meeting the tech. And I said, last year, COVID struck, and this was probably a good thing in the sense of, slowing down and asking yourself, what do you want to do with your life? You want to make an impact, but in what sense and space you want to make that impact? And that's when, for me, I wanted to explore my passion of this, again, as I call it, the beautiful intersection of human psychology and tech. And Adecco is the largest organization in that space. And I said, if I don't try, I don't know if I can do it. And I took up the career job 1st of January.
Wow. That's brilliant. I think while you were talking, I was visualizing the human intersection with the robots and stuff. I think it's scary. I think somebody yesterday told that if we don't curtail artificial intelligence by 2026, then humans will lose out or something. You received all these messages, Reshma, but it's amazing. That's great. So, that's. I think, listeners, if you miss out, Reshma started in Kerala, then she went to Larsen & Toubro, which was headquartered in Mumbai, I think, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, and from Mumbai, the project that she spoke about was in Qatar, that's in Middle East. And from then on, marriage took her to the US. And from then on, she also worked in Southeast Asia. Where exactly in Southeast Asia, Reshma?
So I have worked in Indonesia extensively, but also Malaysia and Singapore.
Yeah, so that's 3 more there. And then she came back to Zurich. and now she's in Zurich. I'm gutted that you chose Zurich rather than UK, but that's okay. It's UK's loss is Switzerland's gain, but we'll find you somehow and to bring you back here at some point. So Reshma, I think beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your career timeline so far. Wish you all the success at your new role in Adecco, January 2021. Sounds fantastic. So let's talk us through the other part of Reshma. I think in between there were lots of awards that you won as well. Anything in particular you would like to highlight that you're much more closer to your heart?
I think awards are, it's like, when you talk about jobs and salaries, I think salaries are the way to show that you're valued. But job itself is what makes the impact. So I would say awards are a way to show that I'm recognized, and I'm very, very grateful and happy for that. But the awards are a culmination of a lot of efforts that has gone in the past years. So when I talk about all the awards that I won, like, for example, the Change Agent Award in Switzerland, this is simply because, I truly believe that change starts with us. And I truly believe that conversations lead to change. But it's painful, right? Painful and time consuming. How do you convince people who are not convinced about things that requires change? Or if you see the awards or the feature around role models, or getting women into STEM, this doesn't happen overnight. It's a lot of consistent and persistent efforts over the year. So again, I'm happy and very grateful for that. But if you ask me, would I have been unhappy that I was not recognized within awards? Clearly not. Simply because I believe that, and when I look back at my 16-year-old self, what I would have really liked back then is to have a role model. I would have really appreciated to have someone who would have shown me the possibilities. So this is exactly what I'm actually paying it forward to say that, what I didn't have, I can actually do now, because I'm in a position of power and I'm in a position of influence, and I have the capability to give back.
Well said. I mean, I was literally visualizing that 16-year-old person transformed into the Reshma that we hear today. I mean, kudos to you, Reshma. Well done, you. And totally, I think the whole reason why you are part of this podcast and all this recognition is to inspire other Reshmas in different, emerging economies, or even within the Western economies, who are looking for the next leader who they could rely on. Say, you know what, if Reshma can break the barriers and achieve, I can also. And also you're always there, willing, coaching people. So well done, you.
Thanks.
So lockdown and COVID, I know you are a high flying, career, but how did you cope with working in a constrained environment and going through? How are you adapting to this new normal?
So I would say, the first lockdown that we had in Switzerland was last year, 2020 March. And, back then, no one knew what COVID was. We didn't know whether it's temporary or it's going to be as long as it has lasted now. So it was a scary situation, simply because human beings panicked. Every human being panicked. And if I think about March 16th, when we went into lockdown, we literally had no supplies in the supermarket. And as a family, we simply refused to stock up since, it's actually unfair to other people who also would like to have basic things, milk, bread, eggs. And we said, this might pass by, but let's not fall into the game of stocking up things. But having said that, I still remember my 12-year-old had come and asked us, are we going to starve now? Because we are not stocking up. So this was scary. And the second big change, I would say, for me personally, was also not traveling. Because, I would say the past 10 years, I have been traveling Monday to Friday. Because you're working in global roles, you're working in multinational corporations, and you are actually traveling Monday to Friday. So this was a big change in the sense that, how do you, from a professional point of view, how do you actually deal with teams that you're not going to meet now? and you don't know when you're going to meet them. And from a family perspective of, having all of us, and my son also went into homeschooling back then, all of us actually 24 hours staying at home. So this was a huge change. And that change, what happens with change is that you become anxious. So I would say, as a family and as an organization, so if I look back at my team back then, it was a moment or period of anxiety. But then this is also, I would say, again, growing up, years where, as I said, I have never looked at external challenges. I've always looked at what is within my control. And this is where I quickly changed that perspective in 2 weeks. So 16th of March, it was completely, the first 2 weeks were completely anxiety attacks, to ask both at the family level and at an organization level, so at my team level, okay, what is it that we can actually take under our control and change, so that we are not succumbing to the pressure of outside, which was basically the lockdown, the uncertainty. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what this virus is all about. So at a family level, I would say first thing was to establish a routine. And again, to make sure that, we are not binge eating. So this is what happened. And the other day I was actually searching internet for something, and I suddenly saw, lose your COVID weight. And I was thinking, I'm happy I took that decision back then to say that we needed to have a routine. Otherwise you get into this binge eating, and before you know, you have gained 10 kilos, right?
Yeah.
So we established routines at home, watching what we ate, some physical activity that needed to be part of the routine. Second was to establish that space between work and life. And I think what happened back then, and I would say it's still a struggle to balance. Every time you say home office, it's a subconscious mind, right? The subconscious mind immediately thinks, oh, you have converted your home into your office, which means that 24 hours is office or work, and 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And this is not good. This is not good mentally, and this is not good neither for the personal life, so as in the family, nor for the organization. So this was another element that I had to bring in to say that we create boundaries. So whatever it is, so 6 o'clock, my husband and I, we would go for a walk outside, and that was my boundary for the day. So after 6, it's closed. So if you do the work at 7, but done. I'm not checking emails, and not actually taking calls, and not being on Zoom calls after that, but that's my boundary. And same thing in the morning. Okay, as soon as you have breakfast, it's the office time, but we set boundaries. And same thing for the weekends, we set boundaries. And at the organizational level, it was very challenging to change the thinking of, physical experience to virtual experiences. So your team meetings had to be virtual, your one-on-ones with your team had to be virtual, your get-togethers had to be virtual. So nonetheless, I think this is also the power of the human mind to adapt. So Charles Darwin's theory of adaptation, right? So I think staying together, both at a family level and at an organizational level, staying together with the team, seeing through that, and actually talking, as a leader, I would say this last year was one of my most vulnerable years, where I was totally vulnerable with the team and said, listen, I have the same challenges as all of you. I go through the same anxiety as all of you. So that vulnerability helped the team to bond. And I would say it's the same leadership style that I've carried to my new job as well. And I have to say this, Bhaskar, that I am completely underestimated starting a job as well during COVID, where, as soon as I joined, 14th of January, Switzerland went into the second lockdown. And slowly we are easing the restrictions now. And thank God to the vaccination and the massive drive in Switzerland around vaccination. 1st of June, we go back to completely eased restrictions. But January 14th up until now, I have to say, I underestimated starting a new job.
100%. But I'm glad, you again, you self-control family, and you also managed your team. And they all are healthy. That's the main thing. And here we are talking. Well, that's great. That's great. This COVID has really taught us there's certain things, as you rightly said, the word that we used before, taking for granted. There's so many things that we took for granted was actually told us how important it is to meet friends face to face, have a laugh, have, whatever you call it, they're all being tested. And now we know absolutely what's important, what's not important. That's great. Thank you. So COVID is done. So any inspiring stories or any shout outs from your team or anything that you saw in this 1 year of COVID crisis?
So one of the most, I'm not sure if I could call it inspiring, but one of the most heart-touching acts of kindness, if you can put it that way, was most recent, where, as you know, India is struggling with the COVID situation. And my parents were affected, my in-laws were impacted, extended family, I have my entire family living still in India. And I was extremely anxious because you can't travel. You can't sit here in Zurich, miles away, thousands of miles away, and do any help in that sense, except for financial help. Okay. And I was, I was also anxious at work that, we are not able to do, also for our colleagues in India, we are not able to do anything physically, but it's just the financial help. And a colleague from my team, Zurich, actually he did a fundraising and completely, out of his own, voluntarily. And the people that have contributed from the organization to that fundraising is incredible. And I felt, that was a very heart-touching moment where Zurich has seen me go through my panic moments, especially with parents being COVID impacted, friends being COVID impacted, and you don't know what's going to happen. And who simply took matters in his hand and said, the only thing that we can do at the moment is financial help, and let's do a fundraising. And all of the colleagues who came together to raise those funds for India. I mean, I have to say, I've been extremely touched by that act of kindness.
100%, Reshma. I think there is this sense of helplessness across non-resident Indians. What can we do? What's the right channel? Will it reach the right people? But there are people who are on the ground without thinking, we are just going to do it. And these are the common people who always stood with the community, who just did the impact. But I'm glad, kudos to Zurich and the wider team who just did the fundraising. And I'm sure that whatever small or big amount that they raised is making somebody smile or creating few impacts around the society. That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Reshma. So we talked a lot about your professional side, Reshma. Let's buckle up and talk a little bit more about you on the other side. Tell us 3 things not many people know about you.
Interesting. I consider myself an extremely open book. So I would struggle if you ask me the question that what is it that people wouldn't know about me? There is I have to be honest here. There is very few things that people who do not know me close enough actually wouldn't know about me. I'm really, really an open book. And I think one way to connect with people, or the only way I would say to connect with people, is to connect at a personal level. I have not seen connections which have been made truly at a professional level when we say, we talk about facts and data and we say, no, it's really not that. It's really connection at a personal level. So I would, Bhaskar, I would really struggle to find things that nobody knows about me.
I mean, this listeners is slightly different to most of the people you might have worked with. So anything that, you might know, I've been to Qatar and I've done this activity, or in US, I've been all this. Anything comes to your mind that's unique?
I would say, let me put it this way. I'll share 3 interesting, probably amusing things about me. So I'm a complete couch potato. So if you would come to my home, you would actually find me on my couch. This is something that I would say it's probably, people think of, especially when you are successful in your career, people think of you as extremely active. You would be doing this and doing that. No, if you would come home to my home, 99% chances are that you would actually find me on my couch. And the second thing I would say is that, again, what could be a contradictory thing is that, especially when you're focused on your career, when you're ambitious in your career, what is one thing that you could enjoy the most? Like, what is relaxation? For me, this is cooking. I'm a I would say, up until marriage, I didn't know the basics of cooking. Again, as I said, growing up years, parents completely focused on education. So it was always, you needed to study. You were never allowed to do anything else in that sense. And my husband is a foodie. So I picked up a lot of culinary skills after marriage. And again, if you don't find me on my couch, you would find me in the kitchen, cooking something. And I totally enjoy doing the fusion of Western food to Indian flavors. So this is something that I would say is something that is amusing. So people always ask me, where do you find the energy to cook, especially when you come after a long, tiring day or after long travels. You have done a transatlantic travel and you're just back home. And I think for me that is extremely relaxing. So if you see me at home in the evenings and especially after a long day at work, I would be cooking. And the third thing I would say, amusing. It is interesting when I think maybe there are not more than two things, but I would say another interesting thing, maybe not so much amusing, is also that I love to read. So anywhere, if you catch me on the public transport, for example, I would be reading a book. And all of my books are electronic, so you would see me reading it either on the phone or on the iPad. But I try and read at least one book a week.
That's good. That's good, Reshma. See, I told you there's something.
There's always something. You're right. You're absolutely right. There's always something.
That's great. That's great. Let's go back to our random rapid fire questions round. Don't think too much. Whatever comes in your mind is the answer. Yeah, it's random, totally random here. So what was your favorite toy when you were a kid?
A doll.
A doll, okay. So have you ever sent a text message to a wrong person?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I have sent the wrong messages to my boss, which was meant to be my husband, many times.
It's like, that's great. So let's not dwell deep on that, but let's move on.
And no, it's an interesting anecdote, and I would like to actually, at least for the fun part for the viewers, I would like to say this. So my previous boss, I actually sent a text to him, which was actually meant for my husband, which was actually picking up groceries on the way. And, because I was having a long day, we were doing these project reviews and I was having a long day at work, and I knew that, and in Switzerland, everything closes very early. So I was 100% sure I'm not going to reach home before the supermarkets close, and we needed to pick up, just the basic grocery. And the text was meant for my husband. It went to my boss. And interestingly, he picked up the groceries and dropped it at my home.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so nice.
That's incredibly nice, I have to say.
Yes. That's part of Switzerland as well, right? That's amazing. That's great. That's really funny. So you are planning the most awesome dinner party of your life. Which 3 celebrities or historical figures would you add to your guest list? And what would you be cooking for them?
Oh, that's an easy one. I would say celebrities, because you are celebrities. It would be Shah Rukh Khan, for sure. George Clooney.
Oh.
For sure, yes. And probably, if I had to throw in some diversity here, I would actually be inviting Deepika Padukone. And what would I be cooking? That's also an easy one. As I said, I'm a big fan of fusion foods. So something that is totally Western. So one of my favorite fusion food is the Parmesan. So I do it with a lot of, so the chicken Parmesan is I would say that the common one in that sense, or the traditional one. I would completely shift it to a bindi. So then okra Parmesan or something like that.
That's very good. I like your guest list as well. That's good. All the cine artists, which is good. So have you ever watched a movie and you cried?
Oh, several ones. Yeah, several. I'm an emotional person, I would say. I think one of the things that I like doing is to use my emotions the right way. So why I say that is because, movies, you are you are yourself. And there are several movies, I would say, that invokes that emotion in you. So it would be a really long list if I would give.
Totally. So what song do you hear when you're alone, and what memory does it bring it back to you? What's your favorite song?
My favorite song is from the movie Silsila. I know your audience could be very Western as well. So I don't know how many of them can relate to it. So this is a movie from the 1980s. It was shot in Switzerland. A movie is Silsila, and it actually talks about, so this is Ye Kahan Aa Gaye Hum. So it actually is about, translated to English, it's where have we come in this journey. And it's a strong reminder for me of my marriage. So my husband and I, as I mentioned, we went to school together. We come from different communities. So we had absolutely no ambition to get married. We were just best friends. And, marriage was was as random as anything could be. And I've been with him for 20 years now, 15 years of marriage, but 20 years now. And every time I hear that song, it invokes a extremely strong emotion in me because it's actually my life. It's actually where I have, and we have come so far together.
That's beautiful. That's so nice. So what's the weirdest thing you have ever eaten?
Octopus.
Oh, nice. Nice. So how did you eat the octopus? Fried octopus or...
Don't ask me what shape and form it was. I ate it without knowing it was an octopus. Right. And it was very slimy and, chewy. And then because it was slimy and chewy in that sense, I had to ask, what is it? After I was almost like 3/4 done. And my hostess said, it's an octopus. And I was like, wow. So I ate an octopus.
That's good. Because my wife is from Japan, and there they have what they call takoyaki. It's like in the south we call paniyaram, right?
Yeah.
So it's called octopus balls.
Oh.
So it is nothing, I think. So it's simply a paniyaram with the little piece of octopus in the middle. You won't even realize it's there, but you will have it next time. So that's great. So if we make a movie of your life, Reshma, what do you think should be the title, and which actress do you think should play the role?
From an actress, I would say it's Meg Ryan, and I've thought about it several times, right? So if I would make a movie, so I would say it's really Meg Ryan, and I think that the characters that she's also played, it's so much like close to like who I am. What would be the title of the movie? The title of the movie would be Nothing is Impossible. This is what I would... my life is summed up in actually literally that, nothing is actually impossible if you set your heart to.
That's nice. Brilliant. So if you could be invisible for a day, what would you do?
So listen, this is another of those trick questions where I have to say that I'm not ashamed, or I'm not I have no inhibitions about doing what I want to do. I don't have to be invisible to do that. So I take the invisible part out. If I had a day completely to myself, what would I do? I would actually lie on a beach and have cocktails all day.
That's so nice. Definitely. Invisible cocktails.
Visible cocktails.
Exactly. Who haven't you talked or seen in a long time, and you hope that they're doing okay?
My friends. Really my friends with whom I went to school with, really close friends. I have not seen them in a long time. And I do wake up some days and actually wonder how they're doing.
Nice. Definitely. We all miss those personal friends. That's great. So what would you do if you have a time machine? Would you go to the past or would you go to the future?
Neither, really, literally neither. I think this is one of the things that has had a significant shift in my mind. I have lived a lot in the future. I wouldn't necessarily say in the past. I have lived a lot in the future, and I still feel there are elements of me who still, parts of me that still lives in the future. And I really am making that shift to live in the present. So I don't want a time machine, to be honest. I want to live in the present, enjoy the present, and you want to take everything as it comes and not let the past define me. I think I've been extremely successful in making that shift of not letting the past define me. So I don't live in the past at all. But as I said, there are parts of me that still lives in the future and I'm getting out of it. I really want to live in the present.
Nice. So if you could be an Olympic athlete, what sports would you compete?
You're asking a couch potato.
Imagine. I just said
imagining maybe the sprints, 100-meter sprint. This is something that gives a lot of adrenaline. So I like adrenaline rush. So I would say the 100-meter sprints.
As you said, you need to explore the possibilities, Reshma. You never know. So that's good. If you were to be on a reality TV show, which one would you be on and why?
Wrong question to the wrong person. I have no idea of reality shows.
No?
Unfortunately.
I don't watch myself, but just in case, I just thought I'll land that. That's good. So the last one from my side. If you are attending a Halloween party, what would your costume be and why?
Oh, interesting one. Okay. It's a tough question because, one, I have never attended a Halloween party, even when my son was a little. So I've never dressed up in that sense. And second, to think of me as someone else, even for most likely I would dress up as Snow White. And why? I think, this is this strong stereotype that we have in the society where, beauty and brains don't go together. And I cannot tell you the number of compliments. In a way it is compliment, but it's really demeaning compliment when people say, oh, you're pretty and you have a brain. So I would say just for that perceptional barrier breaking, I would totally dress up as Snow White.
Reshma, Snow White. I'll leave it to the listeners to visualize that, but that's great. Thank you for taking the time to share that with. Let's go back. I know you're blessed with so many people in your life, Reshma, but let's just look back and talk about who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career.
So influential in life, I think I mentioned in some part of our talk about and maternal uncle I have. He has been extremely influential, again, opening up a lot of possibilities for me just to see the world in a different, with a different lens. That would be one. And second, and I would say without an element of doubt, without an iota of doubt, my husband. I think he's one of those people who truly embodies that he needs to support me on the home front if I need to be successful on the professional front. And he truly embodies that. So it has been a great journey so far in that sense. And he would be, and everything, he's my best friend. So I turn to him for a lot of advice as well. So to personal front, the two of them. Professionally, I would say I have a lot of mentors. And it would be extremely unfair to just single one out. But I am who I am because of all the mentorship and coaching that I have received on the professional front. So several people have influenced me, and I'm sure several people would continue to influence me on the professional journey.
That's nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Reshma. So if I ask you a 12-year-old a reference for mommy, what do you think? Is it a boy or a girl?
It's a boy.
It's a boy, yeah. What do you think your son will say about Reshma, mommy?
I think, and it's not a conceptual, what would he say? We have these conversations at home about, our opinion about each other so that we know it's a kind of a feedback loop. My son totally thinks that I'm an ambitious career woman in that sense. And because of that, he also knows that, what it does to him being independent. So from his point of view, he would say, and he says that I give him the freedom to do what he wants, but very much within a controlled frame, so to say. And I'm there for him when he wants, and leaves him alone when it is not required. So he has a good balance between mother, and he would also tell you that, I'm a mother and not a friend. And there are moments or conversations that we have where he tells me that, you could never be my friend, but you are my mother. And I think that parental part is very much etched in his mind with respect to the parenting style as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Reshma, when you mentioned you have lived and worked in like 13 countries, right? Mm-hmm. How was it? I mean, like when you land, I remember the day when I came from India, flew over to UK for my master's degree. The next day when I woke up, my mommy wasn't there to make me coffee. I don't know how to cook. I need to look after myself. When I walked out, it was very different landscape. But then, I've traveled and worked, but not as extensive as you have done. And what advice and how did you adapt yourself in the first place to go and live and work in a lot of countries? And what advice would you give people who are considering that sort of moves?
So the advice I would give to people who are considering a move is that move. I mean, just move. Simply because, our baggages are what always holds us down. So every move has actually helped me leave those baggage. So I don't look at it from a possibility of can I adapt or not. I look at it from a possibility of saying, I can leave my baggage behind. So, for example, when I moved out of India, Middle East was still very much, and the statistics from Middle East, 85% of the people are not Middle Eastern, so to say. So there were still a lot of Indians. So this actually but in a very different context. So a lot of those stereotypical biases just was eliminated. I saw that people were judging me, but in a completely different way. But when I moved to, let's say US, for example, it gave me again a fresh start. So I could actually move into a space where, the judgments are always there, but judging on a completely different plane. So every move that I have made has helped me leave my baggage behind, both physically, figuratively, and literally. So when I say figuratively and literally because, all the 13 moves that we have done, we have not carried anything with us. We have always used the airline's travel baggage allowance. We've never used a container. This just helps you leave things behind and start new. And every time you start new, you actually discover a new person in yourself.
Well said, Reshma. Well said. Reshma, as you said, coming from a woman of color, you have to break a lot more barriers, like, as you said, sub-zero to come to zero, and from zero to go ahead and do other things. So what advice would you give a woman of color aspirant who's looking to pursue a career similar to yours?
So the advice I would give is do not expect the world to be fair. This is a mistake I did. You expect that, all that you need is competence, and people would actually see your competence and you would get everything that you deserve. So do not accept the world to be fair. Do not give up. And it's hard. I can say even today, my life is not easy. It's hard. You still need to prove yourself. You still need to, with 20 years of experience behind me, there are still people who look at you and says, okay, can she do it? And you still need to prove that. But, I always do it. And there are moments when I want to give up and I ask myself, why do I need to do it? Why do I need to prove it? I have a 20 years of experience with me and expertise with me. I have done it so many times over and over again. Do I need to do it? And, can I not just quit and do something else? And this is where I think, if the women before me who were ahead of me had thought that, the world would not have changed. So because a lot of women before me actually did that, went through the pain and did not get the benefits that they should have got, they really deserved those benefits and they didn't get that, I'm able to reap those benefits. So if I would quit, and this is what I would tell all the women out there, and especially women of color, your life is going to be hard and accept that, but you're doing it for the next generation.
I mean, I'm so moved by that, Reshma. I think it's not just women of color, it's men of color who go through the same. But while you were talking, I was looking at my own barriers that I need to break. And here we are talking about this. But thank you. That's beautiful advice. World is not fair. 100%. That's a punchy comment, that one. So what's something that you're looking forward to in the future now? Successful career, worked in 13 countries, beautiful family, amazing husband, nice son, friends, families, anything else. So what are you really looking forward to in the future?
I'm really looking forward to giving back. And, every small act of giving back actually helps. So whether it's mentoring, whether it's coaching, whether it's actually sending kids in India to school, which is something we actively do, whether it's sponsoring a master's education for someone. I studied in IIT, and IIT has an alumni association where, you always get these requests saying, someone wants to do a internship in Europe and doesn't have the funds. This is a really small act in my view. However, it can change someone's life. And earlier, I would say I believed in changing lives at a massive scale. So really at mass, 1 billion lives can you change, for example. I don't look at it from that point of view. I look at it from, I might change only 10 lives, but it's a huge impact for those 10 people. So from what I want to do more, I would simply say it's that I really, really want to change lives.
Well said, Reshma. I had a goal to educate 1 million children by 2040, right? And then we reached 400, 450, but then we decided, the better place to do is just to kind of improve the facilities of the existing schools, because most of the schools, there are 3,000 schools in India, which is run by one teacher. So we then invest on the school's infrastructure and so many other things. And in this 1 year, many kids, obviously, they don't even have Wi-Fi, they don't even have phone and stuff, right? And so it just is what it's like. But beautiful vision. Since we both, or every single person from back where we are coming from, because education is our passion. That's the thing. That's the foundation behind what we do, and what our success stems from that. So I'm glad that you are giving back around the same ethos that I have, and the wider people as well. Brilliant. And I wish you all the success on that, Reshma. So before we close, Reshma, is there any part of your life or career that we haven't touched, or is there anything else you would like to share to the listeners? That would be great.
I think you have done an amazing job in covering every aspect of a human being's life. And in my case, I would say, every single aspect you touched. This is wonderful, amazing. The only thing that I would share to all the listeners is that, the roadblocks are never external. It's our self-limiting beliefs that always pulls us back. So ask yourself and, take a moment to reflect. Every time you felt you have lost an opportunity, was it you or was it external? And I can guarantee you that when you do that self-reflection, it's always you. It's probably because you never went and tried in the first place. It's probably because you never tried after you failed once. It's probably because you never explored the opportunities or the possibilities. So what we are is actually because of what we think, and think big in that sense. And, don't succumb to those self-limiting beliefs.
Superb. Definitely, Reshma. I think you nailed it. I think that I don't think I could have closed it any better than that. Thank you, Reshma. Thank you so much. Reshma, I think it's been an absolute privilege to have you with us at Baachu Talk. Please do look after yourself. Stay happy, stay healthy, and inspire everybody around you. I'm sure we'll catch up very soon. But until then, have a healthy, happy life, and please continue to inspire. Thank you so much for joining Baachu Talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Bhaskar.
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please do visit baachu.com/Baachu Talk podcast to this specific episode link to everything that was mentioned in this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share Baachu Talk podcast with your loved ones. We will see you at the next episode with another special guest. Until then, it's Bhaskar Sundram from Baachu signing off.